Welcome to another Gaslec podcast, and thank you very much indeed for listening. My name's Sean, and I'm hosting this podcast this week. So this week's episode is all about skirting board radiators. We don't do too many of them, but we've had 2 inquiries in a single week. So let me explain a little bit about what they are and how they work. But first of all, here's my friend Sean to tell you a bit about the podcast and why we're doing it. Thank you for listening to another Gaslec podcast, the show to help DIYers, new people into the industry, and those who are wanting to expand their knowledge. Each week we'll pick a topic and go into details, and with special guests and listeners' questions answered, we will look forward to some of the conversations. So let's get back to the show. Right, so skirting board radiators, what are they? So be honest, we've taken out more than we've ever fitted. So, and that's being honest and transparent there with the truth. So what they are, so we've got our typical sort of radiators, as we know. They screw to the wall. We have a flow and a return pipe and a couple of valves. They may even have like a thermostat TRV one side and a lock shield or a flow restrictor on the other. And they fix to the wall and they run round. They fix to the wall, and they're either the sort of the standard sort of type of radiators, or you got the quite popular, and they're coming down in price really, like the column radiators. But they do take up a bit of space on the wall, and certainly with modern living and clean lines and everybody wanting sort of that smooth all the way around finish, there's different options available to us. So on there's 2 types really. You've got the wet side and you've got the electric side. So we'll talk about the wet side to start with. So that will run off of your traditional heating boiler or heat pump system. They'll work off heat pumps as well, but we'll come round to the efficiencies in a bit. So what they do is they basically got 2 pipes, be 14 to 16 mil, something like that, around that sort of figure. And it'll be a copper pipe running through, and it'll have loads of fins, like alley fins that are running all the way through it. And what that does, it takes the heat away from the copper and dissipates it through. And that's what we get the heat coming away from the pipe, is it increases the surface area, just like any other radiator. But obviously it's a very small. The skirting board radiators are normally around sort of 6 inches to 8 inches high, and they're quite deep because obviously they've got all these fins to incorporate. But they're quite small in the sense of they're quite low down, and you might not. They're quite decorative as well when you see them. Just the internal and external corners can look a bit clumsy because you end up having these caps that go over. So as you'll get a section of these skirting board radiator, and it'll come along. And if you need it a little bit shorter, then physically all you do is get a hacksaw and you'll cut down the pipe and you'll slide off some of the fins just to expose the pipe to connect onto. So actually, in that sense, it's really, really straightforward. And you put some clips on the wall, and then you run these little bits of batten across these clip things, and then you clip the system to the wall. And then all you'll then do is solder. They do preformed bends. So if you're going into like an internal corner, you can then do a preformed bend, connect onto the next section. So you can't actually bend the pipe with all the fins that are on it. So there are these bends, and then the capping of the front of the radiator, the skirting board radiator, will go over the top of that into a corner, and then you'll have a preformed 90-degree internal and external corner pieces to make the whole mitering system that little bit smoother. And they can look a little bit bulbous, but actually, who can really do a perfect mitre on a metal skirting board sort of front cladded piece anyway, so no one will ever get it nice, so it'll always be the better finish, to be honest. You can do them with compression couplings, and some will have little valves on the end so you can restrict the flows, and they'll come out on like a TRV head as well. They can stick out. It looks a little bit bulbous, but you sort of plan that to be in a corner somewhere out of the way. But like any radiator, if you cover it in furniture, if you cover it in boxes, the TV, put a curtain down to the floor and it's the wrong side of it, you will lose heat, you will lose performance, just like any radiator, and it's no different at all. Not too sure on the surface temperatures if we're in sort of like a care home or in like a children's nursery, those sort of figures there, what we're going to expect. I'm not too sure on that. So we're talking about water temperatures. So I've got some data off of a website. So we'll start talking about our combi boilers, our normal gas boilers. heat-only boilers, system boilers, producing high temperature flows on for the system. So if we're looking at a 72 degree flow temperature, that's quite high, to be honest. But if you're looking at that as a design, you can get anything about 130 to about 200 watts per linear meter of the skirting radiator. So there's different models just on this one website of the outputs. So worst case 130-ish, best case nearly 200, 72 degree flow. Now that's quite a high temperature to be having. That's a lot of heat loss from the boiler to the skirting board radiator. So obviously heat loss at the radiator is what you want, because you want it to lose the heat, so it goes into the room and it runs around the perimeter. But actually, we don't really want it that high. We want to try and bring the temperature down. So we said we had it at 65 degree flow temperature. Then we're looking at about 105 to 166. So it's really starting to come down on watts per meter. So I'll run through that in a second, what that means. And if we're looking at low temperature heating design, which is like your heat pumps, and what we're starting to move forward towards with Part L with the building regulations, we start looking at 45 degree heat. So 45 degree heat is going to give us about 60 to 87 watts per linear meter. Now, my front room, I've got a 1930s house, nothing special, got a bay window. When I was doing my calculations just before I was doing the recording, done some working out. Now, I've got an open fireplace with a chimney, which is sort of blocked off a little bit, but it's not sealed. And I've got an old gas vent as well, because I had an old gas fire in there. So that's not sealed off. So those heat loss figures weren't really calculated in what I've got to here. So I worked it out roughly to my 1930s house with a suspended wooden floor, with a carpet, and with a double glazed front bay window. I'm going to need 1,880. Sorry, no, I need 1,362 watts. That's the amount I've calculated, 1362. So I've got a 1200 rad 600 high type 22 in there at the moment, heating the place, and that then equates to about 1880 watts. So I'm a little bit over the top with my radiator sizing at a 65 degree flow, but that's not taking consideration my chimney, which has got a hole in it which goes out to the atmosphere up at the top, and I've got a gas vent as well, which goes through the wall from an existing from an old gas fire. So my front room will heat up nicely. So I'm a little bit oversized there. So I think about 38% oversized there, if my maths are correct. So how much linear skirting board do I need to heat up my front room? So I've got a combi boiler at home. So we're running at 65 degrees. So if we're going to be running at the what I've already running at, which is 1880 watts, and I then, so sorry about the rustling in the paper, I then divide that into the best possible skirting radiator of the models that I can get, and then divide that into 166, gives me, I need 11.3 meters of linear skirting board to run around the perimeter of my lounge. Remember, I've got a doorway as well that come in, and a square bay window. Now I need to run 11 meters of skirting. Now I've got a 2-seater settee. I've got another 2-seater settee. I've got a square bay window, which sort of goes round and comes through, and then goes around to like a TV sort of unit type thing as it comes around. And then I've got my fireplace, and then I've got like a display cabinet as it comes through. So I don't have a lot of bare walls in my front room to actually benefit, and I'm going to have to bring everything in off the wall to allow the heat. Now it is a better distribution of heat. There's no arguing with that, because it runs around the perimeter of the room, so it's a lot better distributed. So you don't get that really hot by the wind or by the radiator, and a bit cold when you're sort of coming around to the opposite side of it. But 11 meters, is that really doable into my front room at home? I don't think it is. For my exact situation. So we was looking at that from a heat pump point of view. So if we said we wanted 1880 watts, and then we share that into the best system that they have, which is 87 watts per metre at a 45 degree flow off of my heat pump, then we're at 21.6 metres. And you can only run this stuff at 20 metres, so you can't exceed 20 metres. But I haven't got 20 metres of wall sizing all the way around my perimeter. Apologies for that, 1 second. Oh, sorry for my phone ringing there. It's just recording this on a Monday evening, 9:15. So I just really want to get this recording done for you. So while it's sort of fresh in our minds about what we're doing. So that's where we are. So you can only run up to about 20 metres because all the flow pressures and stuff like that are coming through. So really for a heat pump, for a low temperature flow of hot water, it's not really suitable. So really you're looking at getting on for 65 degree flow temperature. And realistically, within my situation, if you just had like a blank area, like a bit of an empty sort of hall type area, like a children's playroom maybe that maybe a really good situation. We could run it around something very minimalist or something with a lot better heat loss calculations than my lounge. In my 1930s. So if you didn't have the hollow floor, you didn't have the open fireplace, you had a smaller window, you had better brick walls, and it was slightly on the smaller side, and it was better insulated. I've got brick internal walls which aren't insulated, so there's a lot of sort of thermal loss through there as well. So if you had a better room that was insulated, maybe. But just on that calculation, there we are. I'll give you the facts, give you the figures. So the best sort of underfloor, best sort of heating really other than radiators is underfloor heating. It's just a lot of expense. You have a manifold, a pump, a blending valve if you're using higher temperatures because you can't really exceed 55 degrees on underfloor heating. So you need to put that somewhere and then run the 16 mil typically plastic water pipes to your heating circuit. So I've got suspended floor, so we'd have to insulate the underside of the floor joists, so all the cold from the vented side of under my house wouldn't be lost on the heat. And then we'll have to fit metal trays with the underfloor heating pipe going up and down between the joists, and then notch out the joist to bring the pipe over. And that will be the best way. We could run that probably in my house, probably get that down to probably about 40 degree flow temperature, I reckon, around my front room. And that would then heat up that room, an absolute treat. That will get us to 21 degrees, 22 degrees, very simply, really, because it's spreading over such a large area, the whole floor area, all at the same time, and not just running around the perimeter. So that's where we are, skirting board radiators, guys. So thank you very much indeed for listening. Sorry, it might be a bit edgy on the old figures and stuff, but yeah, I just want to get that out there that. I don't know if there's a bit of a push for it in social media at the moment about skirting board radiators. As you say, we've had 2 in a week, which is peculiar because I think we've only ever done 2 installations in 10 years. So, as you say, I've taken out more than we fitted. We've had 2 in a week. So there we are, and that's the parameters. So that all that data has come off of a website that's supplies skirting board radiators. They do electric versions, which are even worse in performance than that. But yeah, they do the wet radiators on there. I used a BTU calculator or kilowatts or wattage calculator for a room off of a website. And then I've got my own dimensions from my own house. So then I've just worked it out from there. So not really an overly practical way of heating. I do know I've got to go and see a job tomorrow at time of recording, and a guy wants me to price up for some skirting board radiators. That's one of the inquiries that have come in. So I've got my facts and figures. When I go and see him, we'll do some measuring and see if it's going to work. I suppose it all depends really as well what the room's being used for. So if it's an occasional room rather than a living room, that may be the deciding factor, really. So there we are. Any questions you have, guys, send us an email at podcast gaslec.net, and I'll get them answered. If you want to be a guest onto the show, we can do it on the telephone if you're miles away, or we can come into the Gaslec office here at Gaslec Towers over in the historic city of Rochester, and we can get the recording done here live. And we've got some biscuits and a cup of tea as well. So thank you very much. Have a fantastic week, and wish you all the best. Thank you. Goodbye.